Good afternoon, everybody, both here at the fabulous Empire and joining us remotely at home. And welcome to Show Me the Money, a guide to accessing finance for SMEs, hosted by Local Enterprise Office Fingal as part of Local Enterprise Week 2022. My name is Shane Coleman. I'm your MC for today's proceedings. And to kick things off, I'm going to ask Oisín Geoghegan, Head of Enterprise in Fingal Local Enterprise Office, to formally open this event. Oisín.
Thank you, Shane, to our studio audience here, and also to everybody who has tuned in from home or from work to this live stream event. You're all very, very welcome. This is the last event of Local Enterprise Week 2022. There have been over 200 events that have been occurring throughout Ireland, provided through the 31 local enterprise offices. And all of these events have been really geared at the needs of small business owner managers in particular. And what we're trying to do through the Local Enterprise Week initiative is to give all of you an opportunity, not just to see what's available through the local enterprise offices, but also through other state agencies that are supporting business in this country. Very importantly, to help you identify how you can upskill yourselves as owner managers of small businesses so that you can run your business more effectively. We've also been providing opportunities for you to network and meet with each other, and it's fantastic that there are now a number of live events that have been occurring all over the country during Local Enterprise Week, in-person events as well as online, where people can now, business owner managers can get together again and meet and greet and identify opportunities with each other. So we've had loads and loads of really very exciting events occurring throughout the country this week. We've saved the best wine to last, always, and this particular event is touching on a obviously very important issue for businesses in relation to raising funding, raising finance, whether you're a startup or whether you're an established business that has been running for a number of years. There are lots and lots of opportunities to raise funding, that some of which you may not be fully aware of and familiar with. So the purpose of today's event is to just drill down a little bit and to see what opportunities are there, what funding streams are available to you, and what you could potentially avail of. It's a brief session. It's going to be quite intensive. We have a number of expert speakers who will be speaking from the panels that we have here. But I think you'll hopefully learn a lot from this, and it'll be a wonderful way to end Local Enterprise Week. So I'll hand back to you now, Shane, and look forward to hearing from each of the panelists this afternoon. Thank you.
Okay, thank you indeed for that, Oisín, and well done to all the Leos for organising so many great events during Local Enterprise Week. It seems to have been extraordinarily successful. We've got a great, as Leo said, we're keeping the best wine to last, so we've got a great lineup for you today. We're going to talk to a number of experts in the areas of finance and funding. We're going to be exploring what investors look for when considering investment opportunities. And then we're going to hear from I'm really looking forward to this, from the coalface. We're talking to a number of businesses, some recently established, some who've been, at least one that's been there for over a century, to hear their experiences for you guys in accessing and raising finance. We plan to answer all the complex questions you might have, and this, I suppose it's somewhat an intimidating part of running a business. Just in case we don't succeed, though, we want you to take part. We're giving you the opportunity to take part in the conversation. Not only that, we want you to take part in the conversation today, because this event is for your guys. So please, get your questions in. It couldn't be easier. Just drop us an email. The email address is info@leo.fingal.ie. info@leo.fingal.ie. I'll try and put as many of those questions as possible to our guests, so please don't be shy. The more interactive the conversation, the better. Now, just to get things going, I suppose maybe provide a little bit of context to today's subject matter. We've got independent expert Larissa Sweeney, founder and CEO of Accountants Online, to talk to us. I just got tired just reading Larissa's CV, so I can't imagine how she manages to do it all. It's a multiple award-winning firm of accountants serving over 1,900 clients across Donegal in the UK. Larissa also volunteers as a role model for Leo Donegal's Ambition programme, as a lead entrepreneur for Acorns and Going for Growth, supporting ambitious female entrepreneurs, and Back for Business, a development program assisting returning emigrants, which is, I wasn't aware of, hugely interesting as well. So just in case she wasn't busy enough, we got her to drive all the way from Donegal to talk to us today. Larissa, thanks so much for travelling. Great to have you here. Show us the money, if you will.
Thanks, Shane, and thank you for that great introduction. So a lovely trip down the road this morning from Donegal. And as Shane said, I'm from Accountant Online. We're an online financial services company, and we work with almost 2,000 small businesses. And it's one of the questions we get asked all the time. How do I access funds? Where do I get money to run my business, to start my business, or to scale my business? And as Oisín said earlier on, there are a lot of options available to small businesses to access funds. For example, there's a lot of government support available through the Local Enterprise Office and through Enterprise Ireland, either via grants or loans, or indeed via support like mentoring and training. There's also debt funding available in the form of bank finance or other organisations that are out there that will give businesses debt funding. That can be quite difficult, Shane, and there is small businesses tell us that they find that whole process quite hard, and indeed, they're often not very successful. There is also equity funding available, so essentially that's where a business would give away a slice of its equity in return for funding. And that comes from either angel investors, friends and family, venture capitalists, private equity, that type of thing. And over the past few weeks, in preparation for this event, we surveyed our website visitors. We have about 30,000 visits to the website every month. So we surveyed them. We surveyed our webinar attendees. We have about 200 attendees every month at those, and our own clients. And we asked them, how did you get money for your business? Where did you get funding from? So interestingly, over 60% use their own money. So they use their own capital, their own savings to invest in their business. Only 5% accessed bank funding and 15% accessed government supports. The remainder got funding from friends and family, from venture capitalists and from accelerator programs. So you can see that there's a lot of opportunity for us to raise awareness with small business, to showcase to them the options that are available to them. And indeed, that's why it's great to see an event like this available so that we can educate and raise awareness.
Brilliant. Larissa, you're the dream guest. Not only do we get you in person, but we get market research as well, all for free. Really interesting. And I'm fascinated by that, I have to say. Because in my ignorance, I would have expected that 5% figure to be way higher. Because like when I think of the people that we're talking to today, they're the lifeblood of the economy. They're go-getters, they're risk-takers, they're supporting their community, they're giving jobs. And yet they're not accessing finance for expansion and so on. So what is it? Is it risk averse? Is it just too much red tape? What do you think the reasons are for that?
It's all of that. It's not easy for small business to put a business case to a traditional bank. Banks, by their nature, are very risk averse, and they only want to lend to sure bets. And small business, startups, founders aren't. It's a risky business.
Catch-22, basically. They haven't got the track record.
Exactly.
But they can't get the money to show that.
Yes, exactly.
Have banks become more conservative since what happened 10 years ago?
Oh, without a doubt. The years following the financial crash, it was incredibly difficult. I used to say to clients that you almost have to have the money in the bank for the bank to give you the money. It was very, very difficult.
How much of it as well is that they are so busy concentrating on running the business, and they're putting their blood, sweat and tears into it. Unlike myself, who gets to go home and I'm finished work, they're probably thinking of it 24 hours a day. How much of that is just having the time to actually go through the whole process? I imagine it's quite difficult. The paperwork involved, probably the expertise involved as well.
Absolutely. Not even for banks, but even for the local government, for the government supports as well. There's a certain amount of time that the business itself needs to put into the application process. There's hoops that you have to jump through, and rightly so, because it is taxpayers' money in the case of government supports. So there's definitely an element of us needing to find a way to give back that time to the business owner. Okay.
So if we're trying to think today about what we can do to help those people, because as I say, they've enough to be doing, kind of running their business, and they're developing expertise in all sorts of areas they didn't even realize they had. And this is another area of expertise they need to develop. Like, what kind of things can we be doing, do you think?
Well, events like this are fantastic, because there's definitely an element of raising awareness and education piece here. That's fantastic. Us in Accountant Online, we run free webinars every month. We actually have one next month in conjunction with the Leo Dublin on this very topic. So raising awareness and educating small business and trying to get the message out there on the various options that are available to small business is very important.
What about some of those options that are available, aside from, bank loans and grants from state agencies? Like, just some really interesting, we're going to be talking about some of them a little bit later, angel investors, crowdfunding and so on. Like, if I'm running a small business in County Clare or County Louth or County Kerry, are people aware of those kind of those options, do you think?
To a certain extent. I mean, weeks like this week, I was speaking to an entrepreneur last night who was, very complimentary of the support that she gets from that community. So I do think awareness is building there. But another piece of research for you, Shane, whenever we compare our numbers to Germany, for example, 60% of Irish entrepreneurs fund their own business. It's half that figure in Germany, and the balance is made up from angel investors, crowdfunding, accelerators and incubators.
So it's literally, they're twice as far down the road
Exactly.
As we are.
So we've work to do there.
I suppose this is a question we ask about a lot of walks of life. What are the Germans doing so well, and how come they're doing it so well?
Yeah.
Could we be doing what we should be more like Germany?
We should be more like Germany. We should have more supports, more accelerators, more incubators that have a finance element attached to them, so that the entrepreneurs can take the time away and concentration on developing the product, getting it market ready, and they get paid for that. That's where the big difference is.
Two last questions before we let you go. Can banks do more? I mean, obviously banks exclusively aren't the answer, but they're important as well. Can they be doing more? I mean, is it time to throw off the conservative shackles a little bit, or?
In my view, they should do more, yes. I mean, in my view, the risk element there is just too conservative, and there's definitely a requirement for throwing off the shackles as such, and for even charging a little bit more interest to have a little bit more risk,
Okay, and your message to people here and to folks at home watching today, if you had one bit of advice about financing, about funding, what would it be, Larissa?
To educate yourself on what's out there, to make yourself aware of the various different supports, both financial and non-financial, that are available, because there's a lot out there and they can all help you to grow your business.
Absolutely brilliant. Larissa, great to have that insight from you. Ladies and gentlemen, Larissa Feeney, CEO and founder of Accountant Online, and I suppose part-time market researcher as well. Larissa, thanks very much indeed. Okay, great start. Really interesting thoughts there from Larissa. Just before we move on, a really quick reminder, we want you to get your questions in, and they're really important to us. So that address again, info@leo.fingal.ie, info@leo.fingal.ie. We won't be able to take questions directly from the audience, but if you get those questions in by email, I'll do my best to pass them on. By the way, worth reminding you, listening today and watching today, that anyone seeking to raise funding for a small business, your first port of call, localenterprise.ie. That's your first port of call. You can contact your local enterprise office as well. They'll be really happy to provide you with individual confidential guidance about what your options are. Okay, let's get to our first group discussion. We've assembled a panel of experts who are at the coalface when it comes to funding streams and accessing finance. We're joined by Carol Gibbons, a Divisional Manager for the Regions and Local Enterprise at Enterprise Ireland, by Des McCarthy of Microfinance Ireland. Catherine Collins is here as well from the Credit Review Office, and Oisin Geoghegan, who you already know, from Head of Enterprise at Leo Fingal. Guys, you're all incredibly welcome, and thanks so much for giving up your time to be here today. Carol, I might start with you first. Enterprise Ireland, what do they look for when it comes to investing in a business plan? What are you looking for?
Sure, Shane. And we look, first of all, at the people. So we look to see who's coming into us with their business plan. What are their ambitions? So obviously Enterprise Ireland deals primarily with companies that have an export dimension to them. So we've got 40 offices worldwide to assist with client buyer meetings, etc. But when we first of all look at a business plan, we look at the individuals. We look to see whether or not they've got a track record, and if they haven't, what kind of experience do they have, and who have they brought around them to help them, advise them on their product or their service. That's the first key piece for us.
Okay, so when if I was walking in, would you look at me and go, "Oh, cheap suit. I'm not interested in this guy." Like, what kind? Is it body language? What kind of stuff are we talking about?
So it's actually about their passion, their ambition. Have they done their market research in terms of their product or their service?
Yeah.
Have they looked at a business plan? Have they looked in terms of what particular markets? Is there one market that they're going to go for first? If it's a technology platform that they're building, how far advanced are they with that? And again, the business applications that come into us, They're coming into us looking for support, and in most cases financial support, but in actual fact, there's a wider stream of supports available from Enterprise Ireland in terms of Founders Forum, in terms of networks, and in terms of advice. And we work very closely with the local enterprise office as well.
So I'm guessing from what you're saying, you're not nitpicking. You're not going, it's not the most polished presentation. You're actually looking for what's underneath and
absolutely.
that hunger there.
Yeah, absolutely. And looking at the business itself and looking at that product or that service, is it scalable?
Yeah.
Can that business grow in international markets? And that's the real key piece to us. And we look at the team and look at how that team then is going to grow, and look at the financing alongside that team, and that product and that service piece is really, really important.
Okay, so you've overlooked my cheap suit, and you like the cut of my jib and what I'm saying. What type of finance then is available to grow and scale companies who are exporting?
So again, it's kind of looking back in terms of, depending on the stage of growth that company's at, but I'd say it's a very early stage company coming into us, a promoter coming into us. It really isn't, have they done their market research? If not, the Market Research Centre in Enterprise Ireland is available for companies, but looking at feasibility money, bringing in a business mentor into that company as well. In other words, layering up the experience for that promoter to be able to actually put in their value proposition to their business plan, and actually then really looking at the different types of financing that would be available. So you have to look at it from the point of view, and Larissa made a very, very good point in terms of access to finance. Different businesses have different routes to access to finance. And sometimes it can be a feasibility grant to get you started, to look at your business plan and let you grow that business plan. And then look at the financing requirements for that business plan, depending on your product and service.
Yeah.
So Enterprise Ireland has a wide variety of financial products available, but also in terms of advice and support. And I'd say to anybody, look at Start in Ireland, look at that website. Talk to your local enterprise office, look at Start in Ireland, and make the contact.
So is that a better first step, if you like, than going out and selling equity or whatever, or getting going for a more radical form of funding? Is that a good kind of first step, do you think, for a business?
I think a lot of businesses, a lot of promoters actually learn from each other as well. And Ireland is a fantastic community in terms of startup and founders. So it really comes down to what's right for your company at the right point in time. And if you're going to come into us, or you're going to go to a business angel, or you're going to go to a financial institution, it's all about how you've pulled your business plan together. And actually, what does that mean for you? And what type of financing you're looking for in terms of the growth of your business. So you start by actually constructing that, but you get advice. You get advice from ourselves in the local enterprise office. You get advice from people actually who have gone on that journey before you. If you haven't yourself, you do need that support, and you need that from your peers as well. And that's what we're all about in terms of actually putting that in place properly at the beginning, and allowing promoters to actually see what that journey actually looks like. How do I build out my management team? How do I build out the financing in and around what I actually require?
Okay, great advice. Stay with us. You're obviously staying with us. You're staying there. We'll come back to you in a couple of moments, Carol. Let's go to Des McCarthy now. Des, tell us about the supports that Microfinance Ireland offers to small businesses.
Yeah, thanks, Shane. Well, Microfinance Ireland is a government-supported lender to micro enterprises. So we're part of that, I suppose, government-supported funding ecosystem that includes Enterprise Ireland, ourselves for micro enterprises. Enterprise Ireland is probably at sort of small to medium businesses, bigger businesses, more established businesses, and then the LEOs that bring us all together. They deal with both of us. In terms of what we do, we're essentially a lender to micro businesses. Very, very simple product offering. We offer unsecured term loans of up to €25,000, repayable over a 3 to 5 year period, at rates of 5.5% or 4.5% if you make a submission through the LEOs.
Okay.
So that's essentially what.
The point Larissa was making earlier on about when you go into a bank and they immediately want to see a long track record and they want to see X, Y, and Z and the kind of guarantees that they're going to get their money back. I'm guessing you take a slightly more flexible and innovative approach.
Yeah, look, I suppose MFI was set up to fill funding gaps.
Yeah.
And so some of the features of our companies would be, first of all, that they need to be micro-enterprises, and micro-enterprises are businesses, and this is a defined EU term that have fewer than 10 employees and turnover of up to 2 million euros.
Okay.
The other thing that we find is our client base is higher risk. Because in order for us to fund, we're not allowed to compete with the banks. So our clients have to have found it difficult to get access finance from the banking networks. So yes, we do take higher risk businesses on
Okay,
on board.
which is what you're supposed to do.
Which is-
Is there a typical customer, or do they come in all kind of categories and different types of businesses and so on?
Yeah, look, I suppose first of all they're all micro enterprises and they're all high risk. So those are two givens almost.
Yeah.
But you know, we genuinely look at the butcher, the baker, the candlestick maker. You know, so we do. We fund hairdressers, mechanics, nail bars, coffee bars, gyms. We've even funded an alpaca farm. So you know, it's across a really broad spectrum of businesses. But I suppose the one thing that binds them all together is that they're providing vital services and, more importantly, vital jobs to local communities, and that's the really important piece.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of our business would be outside of Dublin. We have about a 70-30 split between Dublin and the rest of the country. So, you know, we're involved in rural development throughout the country.
Okay, well said. Just finally, I mean, you've spoken about kind of loan products you have. Are there other services you provide? Because I'm guessing if you're a very small business, you know, I mean, you might know about a business plan, you might know about managing cash flow and strategizing and so on. Is there advice, is there help in those kind of areas as well?
Yeah, look, we provide help, I suppose, or assistance in a number of ways. I mean, our ethos really is to make sure that people have the best chance to get their application approved and the best chance to make their business a success. So, you know, for some people who are starting their business, that may be the first time they've filled out a loan application form. So we would hold their hand through that process to make sure that they have the best process, the best chance to get an application approved. And we'd also point people in the direction of the local enterprise offices, because the local enterprise offices have the experience in making sure that the best foot is put forward by these companies. And also, you know, clearly a customer will get a 1% discount if they on their interest if they go through the local enterprise office.
Okay.
And then I suppose once the business is up and running, in many cases we provide free mentoring to our customers as well. That mentoring is delivered through the local enterprise network, but it's something that we think is really important to make the business a success and to I suppose to develop the entrepreneurs into the areas that maybe they're not as strong in terms of their expertise.
Okay, great stuff, Des. Very important work. I'm sure very satisfying work as well, and to see those businesses coming to fruition. Can I bring in Catherine Collins here? Catherine, just start by reminding us the role of the Credit Review Office and why was it established?
Right. Well, we were established in the wake of the banking and financial crisis in 2010 by the Department for Finance. And our role is to make sure that viable businesses have access to credit from their bank. So we deal with the four main banks that are lending to SMEs in Ireland. So that'll be AIB, Bank of Ireland, PTSB and Ulster Bank for now. And we can look at applications that people have made that have been rejected by the bank. So we provide an independent appeals or review process, where we have a team of expert reviewers who will look at the application that has been made by the borrower, who's been rejected by the bank, and they will see if there is a deal to be made there, if we can overturn that decision and get the bank to lend the money for the businesses to grow and develop.
Okay. You're a watchdog, basically.
We're a watchdog. We're a bit like an ombudsman or a watchdog, absolutely.
So do you bark or do you bite as well?
We do a bit of both. So we're...
It's probably the barking is more important than the biting, I'm guessing. Even the fact that you're there, I imagine,
Absolutely.
Is important, isn't
Absolutely, because the banks don't know who's going to come to us. So any one of their clients can apply to us. Anyone who is an SME or a farm business can come to us and put in an appeal. So the banks aren't sure. So in a sense, when we started in the disruption of 2010, things were very different. Whereas now the banks have become a bit more streamlined. We have a good working relationship with a lot of the trade bodies who would send their members towards us, and then we would work with the banks to try and get a deal across the line effectively. And what our reviewers do is they're working with those borrowers, and I think it's already been mentioned. It's about putting your best foot forward. It's not something that business people do that regularly necessarily, looking for funding, particularly in recent years where there's been quite muted demand. So our reviewers can work with those borrowers and make sure that they actually do put their best foot forward after they've been rejected, and they might be a little bit demoralised.
Yeah, I'm sure. Talk us through the review appeal process. What does it entail?
Well, we try and keep it as simple as possible. That's actually in our instructions, in our legislation, to keep it as simple as possible. So we ask the borrowers to fill out an application form, which is mostly tick box, which just tells us a bit about their business, who they are, what they do, what they looked for from the bank. And then we ask the bank to fill out a form and tell us in great detail what their problems were with this lend, why they didn't want to lend the money to the business. And then our reviewer will get involved. They'll contact the borrower. They'll understand the business. They know what the bank needs as well, because they've seen the bank's problems with this particular lend. And they will try and, I suppose, reduce the risk, the perceived risk that the bank has, by providing maybe better information or a better pitch or more up-to-date information, whatever it takes. It might be using other initiatives, other government initiatives like the Strategic Banking Corporation guarantees, anything that can be drawn in to help. Sometimes it might be co-investment with MFI. So,
do you have a measure by which you are successful?
Well, we would think our success would be measured best by how often the banks actually agree and provide funding for the borrowers. So in about 8 out of 10 cases that we support, the banks will overturn their own decision and will agree to provide credit for
impressive.
those. So that's a good record that we have.
Yeah.
So we have very creative reviewers who are able to, put those deals together and get them across the line.
Yeah, well done. Okay, that is really impressive. By the way, if you see me looking at my phone, I'm not checking Twitter. These are questions coming through. I just want to remind you that email address again. So do get your questions into our panellists. info@leo.fingal.ie is that email address. Catherine, thanks for that. We'll come back to you in a moment. Oisín Geoghegan, local enterprise offices, are you focused mainly on startup businesses?
I suppose, yeah, I suppose a lot of our work is with startups. We're focused on small businesses, and in particular, micro enterprises, as Des has defined there a few minutes ago, where it's really businesses who are employing up to 10 staff, principally, okay? So when it comes to funding businesses, currently, we are restricted to funding businesses only with up to 10 full-time staff. Okay, so now that said, there are a lot of businesses that are over the 10, this magical 10 figure in terms of full-time employment, and we certainly do provide a service to those individuals and those businesses by way of helping them to access funding through other mechanisms. But in terms of the grant assistance that's available through the local enterprise offices, it's both startup and growing businesses, so anything up to 10 staff.
Okay. Now, I've heard it said, I don't know how accurate it is, that there's a lot of businesses that aren't eligible for funding from Leo. What kind of businesses can you fund? Maybe that's the better way of coming at it. And what does someone who is, I suppose, setting up a new business, what do they have to do to get a grant?
Yeah, so I suppose now without kind of going into all of the detail of the different kind of grant mechanisms, there are different methods by which we provide funding to businesses. The majority of the funding we provide, there are eligibility criteria attaching to those those funding streams. So we are principally involved and interested in funding and able to fund businesses that are not just employing up to 10 staff, but also have potential to grow and develop, that may not be currently exporting, but have potential and can demonstrate potential to export, and or manufacturing business. So I suppose our core clients that we can fund are businesses that may be starting up or may have set up in the last number of years, but have less than 10 staff. If they can demonstrate that they have potential to grow, to develop, and to ultimately become an internationally trading service or manufacturing, then we can fund the business if they put in a strong case. I suppose we're really interested in businesses that have, Carol mentioned scalability earlier. We work very closely with Enterprise Ireland, and in many cases we fund businesses at an early stage up to the point that they are employing 10 staff. And at that point, or thereabouts, we very often work with Enterprise Ireland then to graduate them into an Enterprise Ireland portfolio so they can avail of further support services through Enterprise Ireland.
Okay. What about the level of funding that Leo can provide?
So we can provide up to €150,000 in grant assistance for projects. Now that's at the very top end of the scale, and there wouldn't be an awful lot of businesses at that end that would be funded through the Leos. So I suppose, you know, very frequently businesses will approach us for funding, could be as little as €5,000 or €10,000, and frequently it could be 10, 20, 30, €50,000 and more. So, and there are various mechanisms by which we do that. Okay, so there are business priming grants that are available for startups, and there's business expansion grants for businesses that have been established more than 18 months. So startup we define as up to 18 months, and then expansion is beyond that. There's also a feasibility study grant, which is available for businesses pre-startup.
Oh,
And
okay.
that funding is up to €15,000 ordinarily. And that's for somebody who has an idea for a business. It may not even be yet up and running, but they want to explore that idea. And in exploring the idea, they're going to incur costs. So they may need to do market research. They may need to develop a prototype. And we can fund up to 50% of cost of that.
Okay, and in relation to the rest of the funding, can it be 100%, or is it typically somewhat less than that?
Well, we'll fund up to 50% always.
No, sorry, I meant overall in the type of, is it 50% across the board for the kind of funding for a business that you're talking about? Is 50% the level you're at?
Yes, correct,
Yes,
yeah.
okay,
Now, there are, I mean, I mentioned the restrictions in terms of the types of business we're targeting. And there's very good reasons behind that, because obviously we can't fund a lot of businesses where it's going to displace another business, okay? So if somebody's setting up a business, and by them setting up that business, somebody else is going to lose jobs, we're not going to fund that business. So it's important that when making a case to the local enterprise office, that you demonstrate how your business is innovative, how you're going to compete, and ultimately how it's going to grow and benefit Ireland Inc.
Okay, two quick questions just to finish. I'm guessing these are questions people at home will be wondering. What boxes do they need to tick to get a grant application approved, and how do they know if they're eligible for a grant in the first place?
Sure, and they're very good questions. Just in terms of the second question first, in terms of eligibility, the criteria are very clear. What we would always do is we will meet with the client at an early stage, and we'll talk the business proposition through with them. It'll become apparent to us very, very early if it is potentially eligible. If it is eligible, then we talk about how they can put their best foot forward, excuse me, in an application. So in terms of the boxes to tick, I mean, Carol mentioned at the start that what Enterprise Ireland look for is a strong entrepreneur behind the business. That's absolutely crucial. None of us in the state agencies or private sector want to invest in a business that hasn't got good prospects to succeed. So that's a very important, obviously it's a very important criterion that we're looking for. We're looking for businesses that can demonstrate that they have strong prospects to succeed. They need to obviously fulfill the eligibility criteria, and if they can demonstrate that they have strong prospects to grow, to develop, to create employment, create economic wealth, and ultimately to export or internationalize the business, they're the key components.
Okay, all right, great. I'm delighted to say lots of questions coming through to our email, info@leo.fingal.ie. Let's get to some of those questions now. Brendan has a question. Is it possible to get a business loan from Microfinance Ireland if you have previously defaulted on a personal loan? Which is a really interesting question, Des, because I presume after the crash there will be people who, probably through no fault of their own, have defaulted on their loan.
Yeah, absolutely. I suppose one of the reasons why our borrowers are higher risk is that some of them have a poor credit score, or indeed, the new Irish don't have any credit score at all. So certainly it doesn't preclude you from being approved, and indeed we do approve a lot of people whose credit scores might have been impaired due to various things in the crash. And I think the important thing is how you dealt with that, and how that you were honourable. You may well have defaulted, but you dealt with it in a proper way.
A trail of destruction behind you when you default.
Exactly. Yeah. But certainly it doesn't preclude people from getting funding from MFI. No.
Have we changed our culture in that respect? I don't know, Catherine, if you want to answer this, because it would have always seemed to be, an American thing. All these entrepreneurs, they fail and then they get up and they do it again, and no one holds it against them. Have attitudes started to change in Ireland towards that, do you think?
I think in some cases, but I think we've also seen the rise of automation and automated decision making, and we're looking more at the Central Credit Register and records of default. So again, if you're going through that sort of automatic route, it can be hard for you to tell your story. As Des says, it's really important were you honourable in how you behaved, even if you did have a business failure. So you need that human intervention where you can actually tell your story and show how you did behave. That's really important.
And that is as it should be. Siobhan has a question. When taking the leap to start my business, I will have to leave my job. Is there funding to support me during the prototype validation MVP stage? The business is not likely to make any money until I have an MVP and can pitch for more finance. That's kind of the catch-22 situation we were talking about earlier on. I don't know, does anyone want to take that question?
Yes, so I suppose we will always encourage clients to do as much groundwork as they can before they do take the big plunge of leaving stable full-time employment, because it's a massive step to take. But there are sources of funding that you can put into place before you actually do that.
Yeah. You mentioned the feasibility thing earlier, yeah.
Feasibility Innovation Grant. That's a fantastic mechanism by which you can get a little bit of funding behind your business idea, and there is very little risk to you, if you know what I mean. So that's very, very important. And I know Enterprise Ireland have a similar system in place.
And it's a really important to kind of that stepping off point for people. So New Frontiers would be a program that we would offer stipends and also assistance then in terms of building up your idea. So what we're really all about is trying how much can we support you in terms of de-risking what you're just about to do. And that's really, really important. So again, New Frontiers would be another mechanism there for people to look at.
Okay, tell us a little bit more about New Frontiers.
So basically, it's a course we have sponsored, and in a lot of the cases, it's in the third level colleges, and it is about entrepreneur. It's about building up your business model. It is about looking at supports for your business, and again, products or services, and how much support we can put around you as you start looking at the market, start getting out and talking to customers, who's going to buy your product or your service. And how much of that can you do in a, let's call it a safer type of environment, I suppose, Oisín, in a way, and that feasibility support alongside that as well is really important. But I would just say to anybody that's stepping off, get as many people, talk to as many people as you possibly can in your own network that have actually done this, and learn from them. And ask the questions, always ask those questions.
Yeah, okay, great advice. Don't forget, keep those questions coming to info@leo.fingal.ie. Joe has a question. Great question. I'm looking to start a furniture business where I import furniture from Portugal to sell to retailers in Ireland. In the future, I'd like to design my own furniture and have it manufactured in Ireland. Sounds great. Would I be able to get a grant from Leo? Joe wants to know. Oisín, do you want to take that?
Sure. So, yeah, it is a good question, and it's typical of a lot of type of inquiries that we do get. It's somebody who is setting up a business that is involved in distribution, which wouldn't ordinarily be funded by the local enterprise office because they're not manufacturing and they're not necessarily
not yet anyway.
Not yet. However, it sounds like he or she is it?
It's Joe.
Okay, so it sounds like he may well have a business plan that can demonstrate that it has prospects to fund to internationalise. Now, if it's a startup, we would look to see a bit of meat on the bone in terms of what his plans are, in terms of the design, okay? But probably not yet, but certainly the Leo could advise him about streams.
Yeah, okay.
Streams of funding, and that may well be through Microfinance Ireland. and there's potential there that we could, in fact, fund them at an early stage through a feasibility study grant on the design part aspect of the business.
Okay, Jenny has a question as well. I think we still have a little bit of time here. Jenny has a question. Does the company have to be scalable to an international level to receive funding from Leo? It's been mentioned several times.
Does it have to be scalable?
Yeah, scalable to an international level to receive funding from Leo.
How we define it or call it would be, it needs to demonstrate that it has very real prospects to scale to an international level.
Okay, all right.
So I mean, I suppose just translating that, if you're setting up, let's say, a retail outlet, a creche, or other similar local service provision, it's very difficult to make a strong case that you're going to internationalise the business. But if you have prospects to do it, then we'd be very interested in talking to you about that.
Okay. Catherine, can I ask you, I want to go back to something you said, 80% of the cases you're successful in. Does that raise a question about why the banks are saying no so often? I mean, they're the ones who come through you. Are there loads of people out there who've been refused and maybe they shouldn't have been refused?
Yeah, well, I suppose there's a couple of things. Our credit reviewers are very expert and they get to spend time with the borrower discussing their business and understanding it in a way that perhaps the banks don't have as much time. Now, we've seen how the banks have closed a number of branches and people have lost that relationship. So our guys can actually get stuck in under the bonnet and work with them to understand the business in the same way I suppose some of the MFI reviewers would do as well. So that helps. And then sometimes they can make a better pitch. You know, as we've said, an awful lot of the small businesses are very busy running their business. Accessing finance is not something they do regularly or they have expertise in. So our guys can add that level of expertise there and help them put their best foot forward and help them ensure that they get that credit. So sometimes what goes into the sausage machine when they make an application in terms of what they think they want might come out slightly different afterwards. It'll be a different product or maybe a different time span. But as long as the business gets the cash and the money to develop and grow at the end of the day, that's what's really important. So it's a solution that works for both the borrower and the bank is what we're always working at.
Okay, actually, a follow-up question to that, Catherine, from Paul. My experience is that banks have become creative, do not reject loan requests very often. They place excessive conditions as part of accepting a loan. If an agreement can't be reached with the banks, can the credit review office assist with this? Is this something you're seeing, that they're kind of layering on the conditions and making it impossible, or is that more the stuff of urban myth?
No, I think there's two things, I suppose, to unpack there. The first is that we're in a time of very high change and volatility at the moment. So banks are going to need more information to understand how the business is going to get through the next while. So that's the first thing. So sometimes what the SMEs might see as being, serial information requests, it's because things are changing quickly and the bank needs to get up-to-date information to make that decision. And I think then the last bit of the question was the terms and conditions. We can actually take a view on the terms and conditions. We know what the normal terms and conditions are. Yeah. And if the terms and conditions are so onerous that the person can't draw down the money, we'll take a view on that.
You can
absolutely.
You can tell the bank to pull in the horns a bit, basically. Yeah, okay, all right. I hope that answers your question. Paul, Des, just briefly, bit of a left field question, so feel free to sidestep it. Is there a company you look at that started out that you were able to help and you go, you know what, I'm really proud of that. I'm really proud we were able to help, that they are a great company. I don't know if you're even able to talk about the companies for confidentiality reasons, but I'm just kind of curious.
Well, I wouldn't be able to talk about them for confidentiality. And to be honest, I've only been in the role 8 months, so nobody has sort of moved that quickly.
Okay.
But I suppose our trajectory is that we would ideally like to see our borrowers who can't get access from the banks moving into, I suppose, graduating from us into the banking system, and many customers do that.
Okay.
But
that's your kind of success measure of
absolutely,
success.
Yeah. I mean, that's the banks shouldn't be dealing with our customers because they are much higher risk. But we de-risk them. Their businesses get more established. They get a better credit record, and then they are able to move into the mainstream banking, and that's why it really should work very, very nicely with ourselves, the banks, and everybody else.
Okay, all right. Just to finish, guys, can I ask you just to finish off your top tip for people who are here today and who are watching at home? If you had one little nugget of advice, what would it be to give them? Carol, I'll start with you first.
Yeah, research your market. Absolutely, do as much research of your market as you possibly can.
Know your customer.
Absolutely know your customer. Get out there and make the cold calls. because a lot of promoters, a lot of CEOs will start their business in one direction and maybe have to pivot it in another direction. And the amount of time or the amount of finance that takes sometimes can be too long. So get out there, talk to potential customers, and they will always talk to you. So get out and do your market research. Really, really, really important.
Okay, sound advice. Carol, Des?
This may sound like I'm sucking up to Oisín, but talk to your local enterprise office. Certainly, the application levels that we see coming in from the local enterprise offices have a much better chance of getting approval than people who don't go through the local enterprise offices. We accept, and we're very happy to accept, applications directly without the enterprise office being involved. But certainly, our experience and our stats show that once you go through the local enterprise office, you have a higher chance of success. It doesn't mean that you will be successful in your application, but there is a higher approval rate of those loans.
Okay, Catherine, same question to you.
I think similarly, if you're going to approach your bank, be an informed borrower. Be aware of what products are out there and what might suit your business best. If you're having difficulty trying to figure it out, give us a call. We have a helpline in Credit Review. Our website is creditreview.ie, and we'll give you a call back if you want to go on there.
Okay, so call Leo and call the watchdog, basically, as well. All right. And as well to you, Oisín, that question.
I think own your business plan, know your business plan thoroughly, and a lot of people go to their accountant, ask them, write your business plan, and then when they're questioned on it, then it can fall apart. So understand your business plan, understand the financials underlying it, and try to understand as much and have a clear strategy and plan in place as possible.
Okay, sorry, just before I let you go, guys, I was going to leave it there, but another question has popped in, and we are trying to get through as many of your questions as we possibly can. Peter has a really interesting question. If a business currently has less than 10 full-time staff in Ireland, but is looking to employ over 100 staff in the next 18 to 24 months, are you eligible for funding and support for creating the employment or getting an office space? This business is scalable internationally.
So I might just I'll take a little bit of that.
Yeah.
So because you're under 10, it depends what type of a business, but let's say it's an international scalable business. Then in terms of ourselves in the local enterprise office, we'd look at that to see actually what sits behind that business plan that you can grow that employment with. And then the question then is, what kind of supports are you looking for from ourselves or from the local enterprise office? But for ourselves, that could be in terms of financing of your business. And then from that point of view is from an Enterprise Ireland perspective, we will always look at who's coming in with some matching money. So we will look at the scale of your business, we'll look at the amount of job growth that you have planned, alongside how much that's actually going to cost you in terms of your business as your business scales. That capital requirement that you have, we'll look at that with you to see what we can try and offer and give and support, and where then some of that other funding comes from, whether it's coming from the business, if it's a profitable business, from the promoter that they have got funding, from the banks, or from equity investors as well. So I wasn't too sure about the office space bit, but that's how we would look in terms of a company, in terms of growth in jobs.
So give EI a call and take it from there?
Absolutely, and depending if you're with the local enterprise office equally, or ourselves, definitely, for a business that's getting 100%.
Okay, Peter, I hope that answers your question. Okay, big thanks to Carol Gibbons, to Des McCarthy, to Catherine Collins, and of course to Oisín Geoghegan. Thank you very much. I find that really, really interesting. Thanks for your insight, and thank you indeed for your tips, ladies and gentlemen. Now, by the way, worth reminding you that anyone seeking to raise funding for a small business, your first port of call, as the guys were saying, should be to visit localenterprise.ie, where you can contact your local enterprise office. They'll be very happy to provide you with individual confidential guidance about what your options are. They do extraordinary work all across the country, so do definitely give them a shout. Now, can I bring in Sean Farrell of the Strategic Banking Corporation of Ireland? Sean was due to be here in person. Unfortunately, he was diagnosed with COVID. Many of us have had it over the recent months, but he has manfully fought the disease and has agreed to join us here in person. Sean, are you there?
I am indeed. Good afternoon.
Can I say you're looking remarkably well, all things considered? How are you feeling?
Yeah, pretty good, pretty good. Not being affected too badly, and apologies that I couldn't join in person, and thank you for having me virtually.
Sean, no apologies at all, and thank you so much for getting out of your sickbed to talk to us. I suppose not everyone here will have heard of the Strategic Banking Corporation of Ireland. Who are SBCI, and what exactly do you do?
So the SBCI we're Ireland's national promotional institution. We were established back in 2014 to help Irish businesses to get the funding they need when they need it. Unlike some of your other panelists, we don't lend directly, we don't provide grants, so we operate as wholesalers through on-lenders. And since we were set up, we've provided 2.8 billion in low-cost, flexible funding. Our purpose, Shane, is to make access to finance easier for SMEs, to bring down the cost of borrowing and to increase competition in the market. And even picking up on what some of your panelists said earlier on around some of the conditionality that SMEs have to deal with, we try and address some of that. So we have two main ways to deliver on our purpose. The first is that we provide funding directly to on-lending partners, so low-cost funding, and that lower cost funding then gets transferred on in terms of discount to SME end borrowers. And secondly, and this has become a more significant part of our business over the last number of years, we've introduced a number of guarantee schemes, which Catherine mentioned in her commentary earlier on, where we share risk with the lenders, both banks and non-banks, and most recently with credit unions. And that results in lower costs, longer term loans being made available to businesses. And importantly, the schemes also reduce the need for security, which for some businesses, particularly service-based and asset-light, can be a barrier to them accessing finance in the normal way.
Sean, maybe you probably answered my question I was going to ask you there. You maybe have answered it there already. The advantages for an SME to get a loan supported by you guys versus the standard bank loan. Is it the kind of things you mentioned there, lower cost, the guarantees and so on, or are there more advantages than that?
Yeah, it is part of that, and there's maybe a couple of additional ancillary benefits as well. So maybe to explain, when you think about an SBCI supported loan, what we do is we provide a guarantee to a bank or a non-bank. And in return for that guarantee, which is typically 80% of the value of the loan, we insist on certain conditions being made available, or certain features being made available, I should say, to end borrowers. Take the example of the Future Growth Loan Scheme, which was one of our most popular schemes. All funding through that scheme up to €500,000 has to be made available without the provision of security. There's a very significant reduction in interest rate also provided by way of the loans that are accessed through that scheme. And there's also longer terms made available than would normally be made available as well. And when we looked at the market, Jim, and were researching the type of proposition that was needed, it was important for us to identify the market gaps. We don't want to become the market. We don't want to put schemes into the marketplace which banks would otherwise do anyway. It's more important for us to be able to fill those gaps, to be able to address areas where SMEs can't otherwise access credit. One of the other advantages, which is a knock-on really from the fact that the vast majority of funding that we support is available without security, is that it's pretty quick to access from an SME's perspective. So once you get a decision or a loan approval from your on-lender, as long as you don't have to take security, the money can be in your account reasonably quickly thereafter. You don't have to go through the legal process, don't have to take legal charges, and therefore you can access funding to make investment decisions when you need to, rather than having to wait in that legal process, which at times can get drawn out.
Yep, it sounds like a no-brainer, Sean. Just a final question. I don't know if you heard Larissa talking earlier on about her own survey of businesses, and I think it was only 5% of them had gone for funding from banks. More generally, I think it's fair to say credit has been pretty muted up to this point. Yeah. Are you expecting an increase in demand for lending from businesses as the economy hopefully returns to more normal levels? Are you expecting an increase in lending to come out of that?
We are, and maybe to put into some context, over the last while through the pandemic, we've seen SME loan portfolios deleveraging. So on average, indebtedness by SMEs has been falling. And that's not a surprise when you consider the level of uncertainty that's been there, both because of Brexit and because of COVID. And there's also been a strong level of government support, direct government support, very high in comparison to many of our European counterparts. As those government supports are phased out, as the future becomes clearer, and very conscious of what's happening in Ukraine currently is bringing some uncertainty to that as well. But on the assumption that the economy continues to grow, we do expect greater demand. And we're starting to see, even through some of our schemes now, greater demand for investment type lending. And perhaps less of a requirement for working capital, which would have been the bread and butter of what we've seen coming through the pandemic. So in short, yes, we do expect to see an increase in the demand for credit. We do expect to see an increase in the level of investment amongst SMEs. And there needs to be a greater level of investment. Even prior to the pandemic, there was a gap, particularly a gap between larger companies and smaller companies, whereby smaller companies don't and haven't had the same confidence to invest in the business as what larger companies had. And for them to scale and move through the ranks, as your panelists spoke about, from the LEOs through to Enterprise Ireland to be internationally scalable businesses, that requirement for investment is critical. And that's what we want to try and support.
Okay. Sean, you have gone beyond the call of duty by being with us today. We really, really appreciate it. We will let you back to your convalescent. Sean Farrell of the Strategic Banking Corporation of Ireland, thanks so much for joining us today. Now, we'll bring in Julian Seymour of Dublin BIC. Julian, great to have you with us. Dublin BIC, I know you pride yourselves on getting startup investor ready. Can I ask you about this Halo Business Angel Network? What is it? How does it connect investors with companies looking to raise finance?
Very good, thanks Shane. So Dublin BIC, as you said, empowers entrepreneurs to start and scale. Within Dublin BIC then there is I suppose we do three things, and one of the three things is around finance and funding entrepreneurs. So one of those things is, face the camera, one of those things is the Halo Business Angel Network. So the HBAN is actually a publicly supported angel network. So Enterprise Ireland, Intertrade Ireland and Invest Northern Ireland fund the running of HBAN, and Dublin BIC is the managing partner for HBAN. So where HBAN is at, I suppose, in a grand scale, is that there's approximately 600 angel investors in our network. They're spread across 15 different groups. And they would consider investment opportunities very much like a Dragon's Den, I suppose. We would hold about 60 pitching sessions a year across the country. Those groups will meet on a monthly, bi-monthly or quarterly basis. Those groups will be focused sectorally as well as being general groups. And typically the companies that they're considering are looking to raise between €500,000 and €1 million in investment. So what we'd classify as kind of seed. Now there's loose definitions around that, but that's typically how much they're looking to raise. By and large, Enterprise Ireland will probably be co-investing in those rounds as well. And as Carol mentioned earlier, they're looking to match fund that privately from angels, from VCs, from the likes of crowdfunding as well. So HBAN plays a role in that space.
Is there a type of company that those investors are looking to invest in? Is there a profile that they look for? So
typically, the companies are raising equity. They're giving away a percentage of their business. And so, as with any equity investment, buying shares, you're looking for a return multiple. So they're not just looking to get their money back, they're looking to get a multiple of their money back. What that multiple is can range between 5 and 10, ideally. If it comes in below that, it's still a good return. But that's when they go into the investment, that's what they're actually hoping to be able to achieve, is that type of multiple back.
Okay. The angel investors themselves, who are they? Is there a typical angel investor?
So typically they would be kind of a mixture of entrepreneurs who have scaled their own businesses and exited. They could be high net worth individuals from, say, more traditional industries. They could be people coming out of, senior individuals coming out of multinationals. And there can be some sort of old, let's say, family money or family office investors as well. Okay.
What should a company be aware of when it's taking on an equity investor? Because it's a big change. You know, up to then you own everything. You're only answerable to yourself, which can be difficult in itself. But you're taking on investors. What words of caution would you have for people?
I think you are getting into a relationship, and I suppose beyond your immediate familiar relationships, it's probably the most significant relationship that you're going to get into.
Do you need to like the person?
Yes, you do. I mean, like, it's a two-way thing. It's not just take anyone's money. You need to be comfortable with them in your business, that they will be part of your business, that they won't be disruptive. And some investors may want to become dominant and be overly directive in how they think the business should be run. And ultimately, the founders are the people who created the business and maybe closer to the market. So angels can add value and direction, but that doesn't mean they're always right. So you do have to, it's a two-way thing in the
your
relationship.
business basically better than, okay, interesting. Just to finish, Julian, what advice would you give to a company looking to raise angel investment?
I suppose two things. First, get inside the mind of the investor, understand what they're looking for. So it's not just about the money. The investor isn't a kind of a cash machine. You're getting into a relationship with them, so understand what they want. But I suppose to go to what the other panelists have said, particularly from Enterprise Ireland and the Local Enterprise Office, is really prepare, have your business plan really good, thoroughly tested, robust business plan, robust set of financials, because if you don't, you're going to get found out on the first or second meeting and the opportunity is gone.
It's like Dragon's Den, basically,
Dragon's Den without the piles of money sitting on a table beside hand.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, brilliant. Really interesting. Julian, thanks a lot for your time.
Thanks,
Julian Seymour there of Dublin Bic. I want to bring in Chris Burge of Spark Crowdfunding now. Chris, thanks for coming in to us. Equity crowdfunding, tell us how it works.
Yeah, it's a very simple concept, and we have thousands of investors on one side of the market, one side of the platform, and we have investees, companies, small companies looking to raise money on the other side, and we basically just facilitate the movement of money from one to the other. We're very similar to HBAN in many respects, in so much that we are moving money from people who moving money from people who have it to companies who need it, and that's what we do. But we have many more, often putting in much smaller amounts. So typically with HBAN, it may be 25,000 or more going in. We have people. The average investment for people investing in ours is about 2,500. But that goes from very small amounts, from literally 100 euros, 200 euros, up to the biggest single investment we've had so far has been 200,000 into one company by one individual. So there's a big spread of people who are investing in through crowdfunding.
What are the advantages of using a mechanism like that compared to, say, venture capital or a bank loan, a traditional bank loan? What are the advantages, do you think?
Well, there are three main advantages, I suppose. One is speed, second one is ease, and the other one is probably PR. So with speed, the process is so much more quick than most other mechanisms, by a factor of 4 in many cases if you were going for a VC. So the process with crowdfunding can really be done and dusted within 10 weeks, quite easily. So from engagement through to campaign launch, campaign finish, and money in the bank can be as quick as 10 weeks. Sometimes
that's incredibly quick, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely, it is.
I mean, do you have to jump through less hoops because maybe people aren't, they aren't putting quite as much money in? Is there less hoops involved because of that?
No, we still do a fair amount of due diligence, and many of the companies that we deal with are either
Sorry,
Leo.
I wasn't suggesting you weren't.
No, absolutely not. But many of the companies are already Leo businesses or Enterprise Ireland businesses.
They've got a track record.
And as such, they've gone through much of the due diligence with them anyway.
Yeah.
But nevertheless, the speed at which we engage our investors through the process, as I say, is about a 4-week window of the campaign being live. And if it's not reached its campaign target by the end of week 4 or week 5, then it may not get it, in which case we take it off the platform and, thanks very much, goodbye. But, we can see the progress of that money coming in, and we're often very, quite sure as to how whether that is going to actually meet its target or not. And we've done now 27 campaigns. Over the last 2 years, we've had a 100% success rate. So any campaign that's actually come onto our platform has raised its money, and which we're very happy about as well, obviously.
Okay. For people here today and who are watching at home, they're going, you know what, this is interesting. The process of setting up a campaign on the Spark platform, give us a flavour of what it entails.
Yeah, we've set it up to be as easy as possible, of course, and so we have a mechanism by which we engage with the investee. We bring them through. We make sure that we're happy ourselves with the actual company. Make sure that everything is, all of the documentation is supplied through to us, and that we are happy with it all as well. And then we launch them onto the campaign, onto the platform rather. The campaign goes through its process, and at the other end, then there's the legal steps that we need to do. So there are a number of steps that we actually handhold the investee through, the company raising the money through at the beginning. But after that, it's a fair, well, the company still has to engage. There still has to kind of promote the actual campaign as well across, and that's why I mentioned the PR is very important as well, because the PR, either getting into paper media or social media, it still boosts the campaign, and that's what is actually important, to actually get the people engaged and the investors actually investing into the business.
So you have more investors, there's much more word of mouth, basically.
Absolutely, no, and that's a big element to it. So we do encourage that as much as we can, and not only does it stimulate investors coming into the business as well, but it also stimulates a lot of people actually maybe using the product as well, if it's a B2C, but even if it's a B2B as well, that people will know about it and go, oh, I could use that in my business perhaps.
Okay, really innovative approach to funding. Thank you for that, Chris Burge. Thanks for coming in to us today. Really appreciate it. Thanks a lot. Ladies and gentlemen, Chris Burge. Okay, almost time for us to get to our next panel. We're going to get the real life stories of Irish businesses who, like all of you watching today, have put themselves on the line, blood, sweat and tears, setting up their businesses. I'm really looking forward to hearing from them. Just before we hear from them, though, I want to remind you, if you want to get questions into these guys, because they have great stories to tell, and I'm sure have great advice to give. So please do get your questions in. It'll really, well, it'll make my job easier apart from anything else, but it will also, I think, add to the conversation much more importantly. So info@leo.fingal.ie is the email address. Remember, you can also access more information on the many services and resources available from Leo. And just to emphasise the point, here's a little reminder.
As your local enterprise office, we're your first-stop shop if you're thinking about starting, growing or pivoting a business anywhere in Ireland. Your local enterprise office is an expert hub that provides access to funding, mentoring, training, support and guidance for all types of small businesses. There are 31 Leos nationwide, and we're here to help you at any stage, whether you're an entrepreneur who's looking to start a business, a new startup looking for additional support, or an existing business owner looking to pivot or grow. We can also help you access other valuable supports from local authorities, Enterprise Ireland and other state agencies. Visit www.localenterprise.ie to contact your local enterprise office and find out more. Together, we can make it happen.
Okay, great stuff. Now, let us talk to some of the people who have walked the walk when it comes to setting up businesses and all the challenges that, as you all know, goes with that. We have a great panel lined up for you to share their experiences, particularly of accessing funding and finance to enable the growth and expansion of their business. So joining us today are Daria Sousa, co-founder and COO of Kianda. We are also joined by Martina Crane, CEO and co-founder of Clever Mama, Nigel Leary, co-founder of Dimension 88, and Thomas Kerrigan, MD of Niall Kerrigan and Sons. I'm just going to start by just asking you just give us a really brief flavour of a brief introduction to your business. Daria, I'll start with you first, please.
Thank you so much, Shane. So our company is called Kianda. What we provide no-code application development software for companies to automate their business processes a lot easier and faster comparing to traditional software development.
Okay, brilliant. Martina, Clever Mama, I love the name. Brilliant. Tell us about it.
Okay, well, we're established in 2003. It's myself and my sister, and we design and develop baby products for the domestic and the international market. So we're export about 45 countries. Bath time and bedtime would be our area of expertise, and we've a lot of awards under our belts now for
Go on, tell us a couple of them. Don't be shy.
A lot of product awards.
Brilliant.
We've accumulated a number of them over the years.
Okay, brilliant. Thanks for that. Nigel?
Yeah, hi, the company is Dimension 88. We are a product and services company around digital twinning and the metaverse. and probably heard a lot about the metaverse in the last while, but what it is that we found with people, even yourself, you've probably done something and you look back and say, you know, if I was going to do it again, I'd do it differently. So in terms of digital
Only
twin,
every morning on the
every
breakfast
morning,
show,
pretty
yeah,
much,
but
yes,
go on,
exactly.
Yeah.
So the idea of a digital twin is that you build it first digitally and you learn the mistakes from it, and then you apply it to the physical, so it saves time and money. And then the metaverse is all about consuming those digital buildings and assets in virtual or augmented reality.
Okay, sounds absolutely brilliant. Look forward to hearing more about that. Thomas,
Ours
you didn't have far to come today.
No, just down the road from Lusk. Ours is I'm the fourth generation manager of a fresh produce business.
Wow, well done.
With the
They
fifth
say
on
the
the
second
way.
generation is the tricky one, so you've got over that. Yeah.
So we're based here in Lusk, North County Dublin, where we are fresh produce growers, processors, and packers supplying the food service sector. It's great to be here today in the heart of the horticultural centre of Ireland. So it's great to be able to say a few words about that here.
Yeah, brilliant. Okay, all right. Let's talk Turkey. Daria, you got grant support, I think I'm right in saying, from Leo and EI, but you've taken the plunge. You've gone with a first round of VC investment. Tell us, actually, before we get to that, your grant support, tell us your experience of that, please. First.
Absolutely. When I was listening to Carol and Oisin, and they were going through process of New Frontiers and local enterprise support, we went through all of these.
You were getting flashbacks.
Yeah, exactly. It was really good. So I started with New Frontiers. I did the program, and following that, we were introduced to Leo Fingal, and we started our relationship with them, and we got grant support for business priming and business expansion following that. When we started, our main goal was to grow customer base as long as we can, as much as we can, rather than going for funding straight away. Sure. So that was the plan. Of course, it was challenging. We had to do consultancy at the same time, half-time, while we were funding our product, the design of the product, the R&D stage of it. So we came to a stage, it was right time for us, after Leo's support and doing New Frontiers last year, towards the end of last year, we came to right maturity in terms of customer base. We have been exporting since day one, so we have customers internationally. So it was right time for us for going for VC funding. Or any other external funding.
Was it a difficult step to take? Was it a psychological jump, I suppose,
absolutely,
isn't it?
Absolutely. It was very difficult. Working with Leo and working with New Frontiers and Enterprise Ireland, you know, there's a lot of support, and they want you to succeed as much as you do.
Yeah.
And there's lots of support you can get. There is these grants available. You don't have to give back too much. But when it comes to external funding, VCs or other types, that there's equity involved in it, it's hard. It's a really hard decision.
Equity is blood, isn't it?
Absolutely. And it's our baby.
Yeah.
So we have two babies, and that's
what do you do?
youngest, our
Get your hands
third
off
one.
my baby.
Absolutely. So difficult. So I think it's really important to research whoever you are going to be dealing with. You know, they need you as much as you need them. So there is really good bit of availability, I think, at the moment in the market in terms of money. So you might have really great ideas, but don't go just after funding straight away. Make sure that you build that business plan, your vision. Make sure you believe in it before you go talk. Okay. So you don't give away too much from the beginning.
A lot of steps to take.
A lot of steps.
First of all.
I think research is really important. So making sure that they will do the due diligence, you know, when you're talking to different lenders and funding options. But you should do your due diligence as well before you go.
Yeah. Good
Absolutely.
Point. Really good advice. Thomas, can I come to you? You've used the Strategic Banking Corporation of Ireland. We heard from them a little bit earlier. What was your experience? How did you find that?
I found it an excellent experience. Dealing with the banks over the last number of years, they have become increasingly risk adverse. And during the COVID pandemic, it enabled us to go and invest in our business at a time was counter-cyclical, where, you know, that you're investing at a time when things have become very difficult, and going with a proposal to a bank was, well, I would have said would have been very awkward, but certainly SBCI behind it made it a huge difference because they're taking on a degree of the risk with the bank. The bank is handling the application and working with you along the way on it, but it's the SBCI they're standing alongside, in our case, AIB, and I certainly found it a breath of fresh air, to be dealing with the bank from that perspective.
Really?
Yes, absolutely.
You'd strongly recommend it, would you?
Absolutely. You think you can get up to 250,000, and Sean Farrell earlier on spoke very well about that. Up to 250 grand without any security, personal guarantees or otherwise. I mean, that's a pretty extraordinary situation at a very competitive interest rate. The length of term in our case under the CGS, the credit guarantee scheme is 5.5 years. That is probably one thing that I think they could work on for the future, because they've set up a really good model here.
Make it a little bit longer.
Longer.
Yeah, that's
absolutely.
It's a
over the longer
turnaround,
term,
isn't it, in terms of.
And certainly at a time when you, the big thing with the banks when you go to borrow money is repayment capacity. During the COVID pandemic, what was repayment capacity? What was it going to be?
Yeah.
A pretty hard case to kind of go and to argue to borrow money to invest in your business at that time. But we took the opportunity to invest in increasing capacity, knowing that things would eventually come around. And we're around long enough to know that, things do turn.
You've been through world wars and everything and all that, yes.
Yes, not me.
Not you personally.
Not me personally,
I hate
So,
God, yeah.
and certainly from that perspective, doesn't matter how old your business is or how strong it is, repayment capacity is what the bank is looking at. You had a situation whereby SBCI, which is the state really backing up this whole situation, was sharing that risk with the bank. A massive difference, very speedy, well organised. The online platform applying through it and everything else was just very well streamlined. And my experience and the experience of our business was, it was extraordinary and something, a model worth working with for the future.
Okay, really good to hear that. Martina, can you relate to Thomas's experience, particularly in relation to dealing with the banks? I think I'm right in saying you've gone with funding from traditional bank loans, from EI, and I think also the Halo Business Angel Network. Just tell us the pros and cons of the various types of fundraising from your point of view.
Well, I would say banks they're hard work. Right, even with the strategic banking backing, I find them hard work.
Okay.
We've also looked at the kind of the peer-to-peer, where the simplicity of that, I have to say, and the speed of that. I mean, if you're running your business, that's what your job is. Your job is to run your business and operate it every day. When you're going through lending, sometimes it can distract you from your day-to-day. And I found that the peer-to-peer was easier, and I could get on with the job in hand.
Why so?
And it was actually backed by Strategic Banking Ireland as well.
Right.
So not.
So what did they take a lot of that stuff away from you, or what was it that made it easy?
The bureaucracy
Just
and the
less
red tape of the banking. It's the whole day-to-day of, can I have this, and it's going over the same thing again and again. And maybe because the structure of my business is different insofar as we have a parent company and we've got subsidiary companies as well. The parent company is the nuts and the crux of it.
Yeah.
So I think it was maybe the structure of my company that made it that little bit more complex. So where with the peer-to-peer, it was just straight down the line. They got it straight off the back.
Okay.
Obviously, many years ago, we went with the business angels, and that was really the kind of the big injection at the early days. That's been a very positive experience for us, and anybody going down that route, I would say my advice to them would be, is certainly look at this and look at the business angels and decide what you want from them and what part you want them to play or not to play.
Okay.
And to know who that person is coming in.
Okay, brilliant. Okay, really, really interesting there. Nigel, you've availed of grants from Leo Fingal, in fact.
Yes.
How did you find that process? I better just remind you, Oisín is still standing over there. So.
And I say to everybody, it was incredible. It really was.
And you're not just saying that.
No. I think, like where I came from, I say to everybody, I didn't sit down and say 5 years' time I'm going to start a business. I started using the technology, and I thought, this is incredible. This is what I want to do. To going home to my wife and saying, how about we give up our jobs and do this?
Big step.
A big step. And I kind of, the question someone said about taking that leap, so I'd say around that is to try and look for other areas of income as well, like how else can you support yourself? But what I found incredible was, kind of as a complete novice, I started with the Dublin BIC, and from there they introduced to Leo Fingal, and that was just an incredible experience. Kind of had an idea in mind, and when I sat down with them and went through the process, they helped us through the process, helped us get funding to get jobs, to get equipment. I don't think we'd be as far on as we are without their support. So I can say that was a really incredible to do, and I'd highly recommend to anybody. I think what you said as well about to your peers, so I think this is really important to anybody sitting out there thinking, you know, if I was going to start a company, what would I do? I would say straight away, go down to your local enterprise office and talk to them. That's the first point to call.
Okay, great. You're hoping to apply, I think I'm right in saying, for funding from EI, I think, in the coming months. Have you looked into what that one entails? Is it going to be very different?
Yeah, I suppose the other thing was, I said you have to learn a lot. So I can relate to the things you said. Like, you're trying to run a business, and then you're trying to understand of how this finance is going to work and how do we grow the business. So I literally signed up and took mentorships and joined different programs to find out what it was like, and then kind of the realization of okay, that's probably more than I thought. So you kind of start to roll back, and you know, I think somebody said at the start, oh, don't worry about it, if you have a great idea and a great team, they'll give you money. That's not true. Not true at all.
There's a bit more to it.
Yeah, there's a bit more to it, and as I said, it's the risk. You know,
I was chatting to you the other day, and your partner Katrina, I think she described accessing funding as a bit of a maze. I think was the term she used. Are there things that can help you get through that maze?
Yeah, and again, you know, I know she's here, and but it is Leo definitely. You know, they really helped us, and I'd say anybody's gone through it, we got the great support, and it's more than just the money for other companies. There's vouchers for getting online. There was mentorships. You know, there's a lot in starting a business, and there's a lot you don't know. And I suppose the key thing is to try and find someone who can help you on that journey. So yeah, I can't recommend Leo highly enough. It was just it is the first port of call, but they'll help you through that journey.
Okay, great stuff. Lots of questions coming through to info@leo.fingal.ie. Keep them coming through, because it really adds to the conversation. And today is about you guys, so we want you getting involved, and we have this brilliant panel here, so let's tap into them. So some questions coming through. Stephen has a question for all the panel. I'm currently a small business that is growing steadily. I've had great support from my local Leo. At what point should I look to move to EI support? I don't know. Does anyone want to take that question? Maybe it's more a question for Oisín later.
I think, depending, I mean, EI has their own criteria of the type of client that they deal with.
And we heard some of that.
Yes, so I think that question really can only be answered by, do you match the criteria? So.
Absolutely, fair enough.
Mention that as well. Like, there is a criteria that when you finish up with Fingal, and that's kind of where we're at the moment. We've kind of reached that limit now that we have to move on.
I'm guessing as well, your local Leo is going to tell you when it's time to make that next step. They're not going to be trying to hang on to you just for the sake of numbers.
They won't be ignoring your phone call going, no, we're finished with you now.
Yeah, exactly. Anna wants to know, the different question from funding, how do you find the right people for your company? Well, I'm sure that's a tough one, is it, guys?
Yeah.
I suppose sometimes you don't find the right people for your company.
Yeah.
Is that's the truth?
You hope that that's the case. You don't. I think we were lucky in the area that we're in. We found a college that have graduates that come out that fit our requirements, and then we have kind of a shorter training cycle. So we were very lucky in that sense that we were able to find a college that fits our needs. So we kind of aligned to them. So I'd say 90% of our staff have come from that avenue.
Okay, all right.
I have a bit of a different experience in that. So absolutely, I think it's a great way to hire graduates or interns. We did it when we started. It's great, but I think it's important to say that if you hire experienced people from the beginning, you are going to accelerate faster. So if you can fund that, if you can at least some level of experience that they have, they will help you grow.
Don't try and do it on the cheap necessarily.
Yes. And the reason why you are funders, you have a lot of things going on, a lot of unknowns you have to, learn. There's a lot of learning going on. And when you are learning yourself and trying to train someone coming in, it's really hard. It takes up a lot of time. So if you can surround yourself with a bit of people with some level of experience, they will help you grow faster.
Okay, all right. Let's bring it back to showing you the money and funding and finance. The business case for funding. Like, do you need to get outside expertise for that? Can you learn that in-house? Martina, do you want to take that question?
I've done both.
Yeah.
And I would say, having done both, do it yourself.
Oh, really? Yeah.
Yeah.
You weren't you weren't
No,
necessarily.
I didn't. I felt that it was a little bit more time consuming to use an outside provider.
Twice kind of.
And, and it is that element of explaining your business and, and you're going in, they're not going to go in for you to ask for that loan. You're literally going in, you're going to stand at the mat and ask for the money. There's nobody going to know your business like you do. And you might get a little bit of help running some numbers, but you have got to know it. So, do as much of that as you possibly can, even though it is time consuming, depending what stage you're at as well. But yeah, I think doing it yourself is...
Thomas, you're nodding your head in agreement.
I think nobody knows your business quite as well as you do, especially if you have a bit of experience at it. And I think certainly you can make that judgment in a speedy and timely manner. And in our case, I know that our assessment of when we're making investments and we're going to try to borrow money or spend our own money is to improve efficiencies. Anything that will allow us to improve the efficiency of our business and to allow us to create greater capacity without having to build a whole new site and all that kind of stuff. And that certainly is a big determinant in the fact that when we go to spend money, how efficient can this make us? And we've got to become more and more efficient at what we do, particularly with, we're in a high wage economy. And we've got to make sure that the people that we have, we're getting absolute maximum return out of those people. And you do that by investment in technology and in that, in our case, production capability on an ongoing basis.
Okay. Nigel, I'm sure you agree with that, investing in technology, very important.
Yes, absolutely.
Do you have a view on that in terms of
I suppose because starting from scratch, like the business case was the foundation, and that's the piece you go to Leo with, but there was advice given earlier as well, which was to talk to your customer. And that was really important as well, because you might have what you think is the greatest idea in the world, but someone has to pay for it. So what we found was that we kind of built the business case and then we engaged with customers. And it's when we started winning businesses, kind of when we kind of jumped on it and went, because, as I said, your family going to give you great advice. Say, that's fantastic. I think it's the best I've ever heard, but you need somebody on the outside who's going to say,
more independent.
Yeah, who's going to say, here's cash and I want you to do it. So I'd say, build a business case, but you really have to test the market and see if there's somebody willing to part with their money.
Daria?
Absolutely. So when we were looking for funding or options, we did everything ourselves. So we didn't get any external help.
Do you surf? Do you look up the internet and stuff, or did you know what to do instinctively? Or?
So let's talk about, for example, VC that we engaged, or the last round of the first round of funding we did. That was via intros, so from our network.
Right.
And finding people and talking to people, I think it's really important to network and talk to as much as you can with other people. Having said that, I won an award from the National Treasury Management Agency. So I was 2020. Unfortunately, because of COVID, I couldn't use the offices enough, but I was the entrepreneur in residence. That was a great experience.
Wow, so you've got a huge pool of resource to tap into there.
Yes, absolutely. They helped us and they introduced us to different VCs, some companies from their portfolio. That was really helpful, and they gave us some support and mentoring throughout the program. And so some VCs we were introduced by them. Some others introduced us to other VCs that they thought that it might be suitable for us. Not everyone exactly is going to match each other, of course. So networking is really important. Okay. And since then, since we raised, just to give an example, every week I get an email from an international VC in our mailbox that they want to have a chat with us since we raised our first round.
Okay.
So network, use LinkedIn, use events,
doors start to open up.
Absolutely.
Okay, that's really, really interesting. Can I ask you guys about a question I actually already put to Daria, but that thing about relinquishing equity in your business, how difficult is it? Is it something that you'd find unpalatable? I'm guessing some of you at home are saying, no way, I'm not doing it. Martina, what do you think?
I suppose when we did it initially, it was, that was it. This was the only way we were going to grow. We had, there was research, product development, market development, and in order to fund that, so, I suppose for us it was kind of do or die. Well, that might sound a bit harsh. It might not quite be that, but, we couldn't do it without it.
Yeah.
So,
do it or stand still, is that?
Yeah, because we would have been a completely different business if we hadn't have relinquished some equity. And, you know, look, you can own 100% of that, or you can own, you know, a smaller percentage of something that's that. So, you know, it is that.
You don't have to be a maths genius to work out which is better.
Yeah. And, you know, that, I don't know, look, you know, it's not for the faint-hearted. Just be brave. Do it.
Yeah.
You know, if you have it and it's scalable and you believe that you can, you know, you can make the return for yourself and for your investors, then, yeah.
Okay. Nigel or Thomas, either of you want to have a view on that one?
Well, we would be a fiercely independent company and would be most reluctant to let go any equity.
Well, 4 generations. Like,
Yeah.
So can't give up that life.
You know, so we would be, you know, it would be pretty difficult for us to take that on board unless we had another subsidiary and we were trying to develop a new idea and a new project. That's obviously something that you'd be willing to take in an outside partner into, or release some equity in that, bringing in that new expertise. But certainly not something that we, you know, would be in a great hurry to do.
Nigel?
We're kind of at that point now, so but that's the point of where we are today. We're trying to build the business to take the risk out from an investor, because again, you don't want to give away too much.
Yeah.
But it is at that point. It's, as you said, it's stand still or grow.
Yeah. Okay. Right. Are there things you could advise people watching and people here today what to look out for, pitfalls to avoid when seeking finance? I don't know, Nigel, do you want to take that? Too many to mention, you're going to tell me.
Yeah. No, like I said, I'm not getting paid by Oisin for this at all, or the team, but honestly, talk to Leo. Like once we got engaged with Leo, I was thinking as well, like the business case, they have templates, you know, they've been around this before. They have the people who've helped other companies. So again, you know, when you're starting out, you're thinking of lots of things, but they can help you on the basics and get you started. So I would say, I think everybody said it as well, who's gone through the Leo, like it is a good starting point. They'll help you, even if you're just have an idea, it's the best place to start.
So don't try and do it on your own, basically. Yeah.
You do a lot on your own, but like I said, there's a lot of resources there to help you. And it is hard, like you, as a starting your own business, you've got to wear multiple hats and you got to learn a lot of new skills. So, you know, I think you're saying there as well, like your network, but when you're starting from zero, sometimes it's good to start with an agency who can help you and point you in that direction.
Okay. Thomas, I'm guessing after 4 generations, there's a fair bit of experience and knowledge base there in your company. Pitfalls to avoid?
Well, one thing I think worth mentioning is that a great deal of Irish companies have no debt and don't borrow. And I think sometimes that actually holds back their growth. You know, it's quite an extraordinary statistic within the Irish business community that lots of businesses don't borrow and don't borrow at all.
Well, we heard about that a little bit earlier on, compared to Germany, for example.
Exactly, and I certainly think it is a great, it gives a business a great spurt of growth. Some borrowings on the books, I'm not saying you should be borrowing just for the sake of borrowing, but if you've got a project in hand, it certainly is worthwhile borrowing. It's also well worthwhile developing a relationship with your bank in terms of borrowing. A lot of businesses that don't borrow and they all suddenly go in to do something and they have no history of borrowing from, and they are not sure of the actual process of going through to actually go and borrow. So certainly there are, I would just say a lot of people are afraid in Irish business of borrowing. Certainly in our case, without borrowing, we couldn't have achieved what we achieved along the way. And that would be my experience. You know.
Okay. Martina, you want to come in there?
Yeah, I would say my best advice would be to read the small print. It's very, very important that you know what, regardless where the lending is coming from, that you know what you're signing, and it does pay you to take legal advice, because some of these, your agreements, whether it's from a bank or regardless where it comes from, there's a lot of technical terminology and legal words that maybe, you know, we all have our skill set, and maybe reading those agreements, you know, might be a little bit difficult sometimes.
Yeah, sure, of
so
course.
Get the advice and read the small print.
Okay, all right. Jerry, do you want to briefly say anything on that? Or?
Sure. So what I would say, grow as much as you can organically with the support that you can get from Local Enterprise Office, Enterprise Ireland, all those grants that are available. Grow as much as you can with your customers' money, if you can. And I think it's important to say, do your research, what's available in the market for you, talk to people, talk to as much as you can, and ask for intros. Ask for intros, whoever you're talking to. They'll be really good ways to expand the network and see what options are available.
Okay. Just to finish, I'm going to ask you, and you might have answered this already, but I'm going to ask it nonetheless. Top tip for people at home, businesses at home, that you've learned. What's the one bit of advice you'd give? Daria, to you first.
I would believe in whatever you're doing, whatever your dream is, believe in it. You're going to fail, but you're going to go up again. So there's no way off. It's always, everything is going to be so easy. It's not easy, it's challenging, but believe in whatever you are doing and just don't give up.
Okay, yeah, that sounds great. Martina?
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, it's your vision. It's, you got to see down the road, be able to see down the road and enjoy the journey. You're not going to enjoy every day, believe you me. But for the whole of it, I sit here like nearly 19 years later and I can go, would I change it? Lots of things I would, but I've enjoyed the journey. But I'm enjoying the journey and I'm still enjoying it. So yeah, it's the passion, yeah.
Nigel, you're nodding your head. And aside from obviously contacting Leo, what's your one bit of advice?
Yeah, no, I agree with those. Like, you have to believe in what you do because you don't always have great days. Some days you'll wake up and go, what was I thinking? But, it's the passion behind what you're doing that drives you on. And the other thing I was saying is that you really need to talk to customers. So once you've started your business plan to figure out whether you've got a viable business, but you really need to talk to customers who are ready to part with their cash for that service that you're offering.
Okay, Thomas, final word to you.
Invest in your business, prepare for growth, and be courageous.
Okay, nice and succinct. Brilliant. Thank you so much. A big thank you to Daria, to Martina, to Nigel, and to Thomas for sharing their stories. Continued success to you all, guys. Keep doing what you're doing. I don't know about you, but I've learned a huge amount today, and I don't even own a business. I hope you all found it as informative. Lots and lots of key messages to take from this. I suppose one of the key messages I take is there is great help out there. There is advice out there. And the starting point for all of this is Leo. And on that note, can I invite Oisín Geoghegan back onto stage? Oisín, really interesting discussion to formally close off Local Enterprise Week 2022. Your thoughts on what you've heard?
Yeah, I think our panelists there had very interesting stories to tell, and particularly the panel of entrepreneurs there.
Yeah.
They all came from different backgrounds. They all started up businesses in different sectors, and they're at different stages of their growth. I think one of the key things is, I suppose there are very few people who set up a business who only rely upon one source of finance. So there are banks, obviously, there's state agencies like ourselves and Microfinance Ireland, SBCI and Enterprise Ireland and so on. But there are also other avenues that you can look into. So I suppose look and see what is available, because very often things like crowdfunding, for instance, it's relatively recent that's really come to the fore.
I'm guessing if we were having this get-together 10 years ago, we probably wouldn't have been talking about that, would we, to the same extent?
No. And certainly we're finding a lot of our clients are actually going down different avenues for raising funding as well.
Yeah.
And borrowings, obviously banks play a really important role. And having a buffer there is crucially important. And I suppose one of the things as well that I think, particularly in a startup situation, you're investing a lot of money into a startup that is hopefully validated, and in certain cases you'll be getting funding from the bank and from third parties for it. But things change quickly, and you need to be prepared for that. And to have a buffer there, to have a plan B, and to have a contingency, I think, is important. Local Enterprise Office is really, we obviously play an important role for startups and for small growing businesses. And we will always try to invest in a business where we see where if the business is eligible for funding, if they present a good strong case, and if the business is being managed and being set up by an entrepreneur that has the wherewithal and the skills and the various different skill sets to make it work, then we will come in with the funding. And the same is true for other investors as well. Okay. You're selling yourself when you're selling your business plan as well. Bear that in mind when you're an entrepreneur. It was mentioned earlier by Carol. People will invest and buy from people that they like, and people will invest in people and businesses that they have confidence in.
Yeah, okay. The thing I took as maybe as the layman here, because all of you guys are very much involved at the coalface, the thing I took from that is I imagine it can be a lonely existence running a business. You have a lot of responsibility. but there's help and there's advice and there's people who can bring you along that path. That was the real message I took out of today.
Very much so, and I think Daria mentioned it herself as well about networking.
Yeah.
And the value that you can gain from growing your network and from building your network. That can be really terrific. I mean, even opportunities like this event here and various different events during Local Enterprise Week, it's terrific to see. People are engaging with each other now in this post-COVID era as well, so there's lots of opportunities.
Amen to that, yeah.
Yeah.
Oisin, thanks so much for that, and congratulations to Leo Fingal for organising that event. I hope you enjoyed it. My message today, for what it's worth, is keep doing what you're doing, keep nurturing those small businesses, helping them grow and develop. You're the lifeblood, as I said earlier, of our economy. You're creating jobs. You're literally changing people's lives. You're doing the state some service. And those of us who aren't doing it do appreciate, even some of us in the media, believe it or not. So goodbye to everyone at home. Have a great weekend. I hope you learned from and enjoyed what you heard today. So goodbye to all of you at home. Those of you who are here with us, I hope you'll have a cup of tea with us and maybe stay for a little bit of networking. Thanks a lot for your time. Thanks, ladies and gentlemen.